What's up, everybody? Jensen Cummings here. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. Today is Best Served Podcast 207, and we're talking about helping restaurateurs with Josh Kopel of Full Comp Podcast. Josh, thanks for being on.
Hey, man. How's it going?
It's going well. I appreciate this. A good day. Just got done talking with Jamie Bissonette, now talking to you, leaders in our industry, so can't go wrong. This channel, Best Served Loud, I'm really excited about this. There's some of us out there, storytellers, filmmakers, media professionals, podcast hosts that are out there trying to amplify the messages, the works, the good people out there hustling and grinding to make this industry what it is. And these days, trying to make sure that it survives. And Josh is somebody who's at the forefront of that. So Josh is Full Comp Podcast, as I mentioned, FLO Hospitality, Preux Proper. You are a busy man, my friend. So lay the groundwork for people. Give everyone the elevator pitch. You have multiple operations running, all funneling towards helping the restaurateur, helping the industry. Give people understanding. What do they expect from you and your company?
Right on. So Preux Proper companies. So Preux Proper is Michelin-rated fine dining. We're based out of downtown Los Angeles. We've achieved all of the success that there is to achieve by the worldly and industry standards. We are on every best of list, on every listicle, every award outside of a James Beard Award and a Food and Wine Award we've received at this point over the last 6 years. So very blessed there. FLO Hospitality Solutions is my tech company. There are so many things that we as restaurateurs need that we can't afford. And so what I'm trying to do is provide those solutions through tech, not to take the human experience out of hospitality, but try and leverage tech to bring more human interaction into the experience.
Appreciate that.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah. Full Comp. Tell us about Full Comp, the show. Great show, by the way. If you haven't watched it, go watch it. You know I'm not big on plugs. Go watch it.
Thanks, man. Full Comp was born out of the pandemic. It was a project that had started fourth quarter of last year, and really kind of came to the forefront of my efforts during the pandemic. The reason being, I don't think that the coronavirus is what destroyed the hospitality industry. I believe that there are foundational issues within this industry that don't give us the opportunity that we need to succeed. And those choices were made by restaurateurs and chefs, myself included. And so, we exist in an industry where everybody's doing great until the day they go out of business. There's no honesty, there's no transparency in the industry. And I wanted to be the first one to stand up and not say that there's something wrong with the industry, but there's something wrong with my business. If I am this successful and still struggling at this level, there's something wrong. And so I use it as a platform to talk about my issues. And then I bring in experts to talk about it, whether it's Adam Perry Lang, Chef Andrew Zimmern, David Meltzer. I bring in thought leaders from inside and outside of the industry to talk about what the future looks like.
I appreciate that. Let's take people back. I want to set the tone for people understanding kind of your trajectory in the industry. We always like to start. When did you first catch the hospitality bug? When did you start in this industry?
Man, I always think back to, I was a senior in high school, and back then they used to have you take an aptitude test. And I had no clear direction. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had no experience in hospitality, and I take this aptitude test, and it says that I would be great for the food service industry. And I turned to my buddy and I was like, man, it's hilarious. I wonder if I'm going to end up working at McDonald's.
Wow. And was that like a lowly status of being in the food industry with that aptitude test? Was that like you're going to be a janitor?
I thought so. I didn't know. It just didn't seem glamorous to me. It just didn't seem appealing to me. And through random circumstance, and I think being seated in southern Louisiana, I fell into the hospitality industry, right? Because that is one of the major drivers of that economy. And the moment I started working at a bar, which was as a bus boy, like mopping up urine, cleaning up vomit, like as disgusting as that sounds, I was like, man, I love this.
Welcome to the industry.
Yeah, but I like being in the mix. And what I learned, and it is what has carried me through the last 20 plus years, is I like serving people. I like it. I like helping people. I like being part of someone else's experience. And so, that first job was at the Alligator Bayou Bar, located on Alligator Bayou Road, located on Alligator Bayou in Prairieville, Louisiana. And then from there, it just never left. I've spent a year or two here and there outside of the industry, but I've always come back because this is where my heart is.
So take us forward then. Now you're getting into, Michelin rated and competing for James Beard Awards and Food and Wine and, the top of town, stuff like that. Kind of give us, what was the catalyst to kind of getting into that realm? Because going from mopping the floors, it's a steep trajectory to get all the way to kind of being an award-winning spot and being kind of a leader in the industry. So what's the catalyst? What shifts you from just being in the industry to pushing yourself to the forefront of the industry?
Man, necessity is the mother of invention. And that's really, that was kind of the nature of my whole story. I moved out to Los Angeles 20 plus years ago with the idea that I would find a concept and then bring it back to Louisiana where it's cheaper and easier to execute. Because if there's one thing I'm a huge believer in, it's stealing someone else's good idea. Yep. And so I was out here a year, 2 years, 3 years. And I was like, what Los Angeles needs? And this was like, if you remember correctly, like kind of at the very beginning of Los Angeles is like culinary evolution. Yeah. And Los Angeles was then packed with these beautiful restaurants that were offering shit service. And I was like, what Los Angeles needs is Southern hospitality. So I jumped back into the industry. I started running nightclubs in Hollywood, tried to bring that personalized experience to the nightclubs in Hollywood, failed miserably, decided to open my own spot, opened a 900 square foot bar on Hollywood Boulevard. And it was a huge success right out the gate. Lines out the door for years. But it was because
Tell
of
people what that was called in case they didn't know or they went there at some point.
I'm sure you did and forgot. It was called 504 Hollywood. And it was a dive bar, man. Like it was built to be like your favorite hole in the wall bar. And we only had one standard. And that was that you could go there by yourself and have a great time. The people that worked there weren't there to just serve you. They were there to provide you with an experience. And so they were the masters of ceremony. That led to the obnoxious choice to dive into fine dining. I had never worked at a restaurant in my life, not one. And then I decided to open a fine dining restaurant in downtown Los Angeles. Again, totally the product of hubris. I was like, man, how hard could this possibly be? Turns out it was a nightmare.
Really hard.
Oh my God. Abject failure. I spent the first year apologizing to people. And then I spent the second year apologizing about the first year. But the third year, I had figured it out. And we began to grow at that level. But again, like not coming from fine dining and coming from, a different culture rooted in hospitality. I just never understood why the industry was so closed off and why people wouldn't talk about what was really going on. Everybody I talked to, I was like, hey man, how's business? And they'd be like, oh, it's great. And I'm like, really? Because I'm having a down month. They're like, no, man, things are great. And I just got tired of hearing it. So I pulled myself out of it,
Let's go to the why of that, because what you're talking about is interesting. I think about that dynamic and maybe go deeper into this or maybe redirect me. I think because we're in the industry of always have a smile on, it's part of your uniform, always delivering on that experience, as you mentioned, we have that facade. It's real, it's genuine, it's authentic, yet it is still a facade, right? We are always needing to put on a show. And we put all of ourselves in it and we leave nothing for ourselves so often. It's why we're great at taking guests and we're horrible at taking care of ourselves and each other. And so that always reflects. You are always putting forth that level of hospitality. And sometimes you get it twisted in your head like, that's not how it actually is. That's how it is for the guests. But that's not how your experience is. Is that what you're kind of taking away from it? Is that what you saw? Is that what you're trying to break through?
I think I'm only going to talk about myself here. I think fear is a huge motivator. And so I think that in talking about your problems, you have to acknowledge that they exist. I think that entrepreneurs by nature are optimistic. And I think that restaurateurs by nature are more optimistic than most. And so it's the reason, and you think about that optimism, and it's what inspires us to get into an industry that is just wrought with failure. But having said that, it's so important to look at the other side of the coin and say, man, if I was a little less optimistic, maybe I would have negotiated harder on that lease. Maybe I would have reached out for help when I actually needed it. Maybe I would have spoken to my community about the struggles that I was dealing with, and not just like the industry, right? But like your local neighborhood community. Yo, man, I'm barely able to survive here. I need to raise prices by 10%. And you see what people say. So yes, I think that by and large, myself included, we've done a terrible job as an industry of letting people know how hard it is to be a restaurateur, to be a chef, to exist in this industry. But I don't know how much of that comes from, fear, how much of that comes from optimism, and how much of that just comes from never really taking that moment to take a breath. Bro, when you're working 80 to 100 hours a week, where is there an opportunity to step back and evaluate your situation?
There isn't until now. And you mentioned that COVID isn't the cause of it, it's exposing it. And I think that's an interesting thing. Why do we, you talk about new perspective on an old business. I want to touch on that a little bit because I think that's a really important thread to pull on. Why do we take it as normal that 65% of restaurants close in the first year? Why is that just something that we say, yeah, that's just the way that it is in our industry? Why have we normalized that? Because that is such an old way of thinking, yet we still are stuck in the minutia of that, to your point, because maybe we don't have the time to do anything other than what's been put in front of us again and again and again. So go there a little bit. Why is this an old business, and why do we need to be thinking about it in a new way?
Let's talk about that. So how much of the industry has changed? How much has it been disrupted? And let's literally say the last 2,000 years. Not much, right? Like the way restaurants operated 1,000 years ago, for the most part, is the way they operate today. And the improvements that you've seen are incremental, not exponential. You look at a huge innovation like Open Table, right? All they really did was digitize your reservation book, which, again, very useful, very helpful, but far from a disruptive technology. Humans are still involved in every facet of the process. And rather than using technology to say, we can pull humans out of this part of the process and then insert them here, and it actually creates a more efficient model, and it creates a better experience for the guests, we stick with what works. Why is that? It's because we all come up in the industry the same way, right? You didn't learn from someone that was well educated within the industry, right? You learned from someone that came up the same way you did, right? Line cooks learn from sous chefs that learn from executive sous that learn from executive chefs. Bussers learn from floor managers that learn from AGMs that learn from GMs that learn from owner operators. So there's no opportunity for exponential change because everyone is locked into these really, really narrow paths to promotion. And you're also looking at a chasm, right? Like you've got restaurateurs that graduated at the top of their class from Cornell University. And you also have bussers that managed to get financing through a bank or a friend. And both of those people are restaurateurs, right? Yep. So there's a huge chasm in between.
Oh man, I'm getting like anxiety just listening to this. It's so true. It is the plight that everybody who's watching this right now, who's ever worked in a restaurant, works in a restaurant currently, owns a restaurant, is that busser, is that floor manager, has been through. And we just continuously run through that wall. And there's a lot of strength in that. The ability to show up every day and grind, strength. Absolutely. There is also a need for us to say, let's not run through that wall every single time. Like, let's figure out another path. And so another thing you talk about, and I want to let you take the floor and really set the tone for, you talk about it's broken, right? Like it's broken. Right. It's time for us to fix what's broken. So how do we actually go about that, Josh? For you, Where did you even start? Because it's easy to say that. That sounds great. Looks good on a t-shirt. Looks good as a tagline. How did you start that process for yourself, for your business?
I started raising prices, period. I raised prices by 10%. Nobody said shit. So I raised it by another 10%, then another 10%, then another 10%. And you know what I did with that money? I turned around and I started offering subsidized healthcare to my team. And it wasn't a line item on the receipt. I just charged more for the food. It amazes me that as restaurateurs, we go to the gas station once a week and the price is different every week. And it's different every week because you're looking at variable expenses, right? So when the cost of fuel goes up, they charge you more for the fuel. But you go to a restaurant and it's the same price every day, every month, every year. And we don't charge what the food is worth. We don't charge what it costs to operate the restaurant. We charge what people are willing to pay. And that's the mistake. Also, because you're dealing with an oversaturated market, there's this sense of competition. And so the new restaurant model, or the old restaurant model, was, how can I sell the cheapest shit for the longest period of time? How do I compete with Taco Tuesday? How do I convince people to come in on a Monday? And the way we change it is by asking better questions. We ask ourselves, should I be open on a Monday? Right? If customers aren't willing to pay what I need to offer a retirement program and subsidized healthcare to my team, should I be in business? Should this restaurant exist? These are the questions that we need to ask foundationally. And they're not easy questions to ask. But once you get the answers, it's really easy to execute, right? If I know that I need to charge $85 for a steak, $28 for a burger, instead of $15 for a burger, in order to cover all of my expenses, put money in my pocket, and treat my team in a fair and equitable way, maybe in Beverly Hills that's acceptable, right? Maybe in downtown LA it's not. But either way, it doesn't matter. Like, it is what it is. So we're scrimping and saving because we're not charging enough. We're scrimping and saving because we refuse to advocate for ourselves. We refuse to change because we're afraid we're going to go out of business.
Yeah.
And you also just can't operate an industry like that.
No, not one business, not multiple business, not 660,000 businesses. Absolutely. So what you're talking about too is very much the psychology of it, right? We often are not making better decisions because we're not asking better questions. We're not making those decisions because we're actually spending more time making decisions that validate past bad decisions. This is the mentality that we're in. This is a mindset shift that we're talking about. We are in scarcity and survival mode, not in abundance and growth. This is fundamental to the industry. And once again, the big reason is time. Like, we've never slowed down long enough to think about what the hell we're doing. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. That's what we're doing. So, man, Josh, I really appreciate you highlighting that. What you're talking about now is operational, which I think is really important. It's foundational, fundamental. I want to go to the story we now need to tell ourselves, our internal guests, and our external guests, because there's going to be that pushback. You break through that. That's part of your entrepreneurial spirit. Most of us cannot, to the point where we burn out, get out of our restaurants, and do something completely different, right? Like myself and so many others. So I want to touch on that. The story that you need to tell. What's the story that you started to tell yourself? Or what's the story that you've seen work for others to say, this is the shift. It's real. It's possible.
Super simple on all, and it's basically the same message to everybody, right? So the first message that you tell yourself is that I'm going to clearly define success for myself as, a comfortable life, right? I will work hard. I will work 60 hours a week, not 100 hours a week. So, and how do you do that, right? Well, if you can't manage to do it 7 days a week, then you close 1 day a week, your least profitable day of the week. Or on those days, like, for some people it's Sundays, for some people it's Mondays, Tuesdays, where those are loss leaders anyway, right? You're open just to be open. And so you make the commitment to yourself that you're just going to make the right decisions moving forward. 2, you turn to your staff and you say, this is going to be a culture first company. This is going to be a data driven business. So we're going to do what works. We're not going to do what doesn't work. And that's going to be determined by our core values and the data that we get from the customers. So if I'm trying to tell a story on the menu and I've got rabbit on the menu and that rabbit doesn't sell, we're pulling it off the menu, period. The future of restaurants is a much smaller menu. Everyone's going to have to tighten up. Menus are no longer going to be a function of ego. They're going to be a function of profitability. And the same is true with every facet. It's true, man. This is going to be true in every facet of the industry. And then you turn to the general public and you say, listen, you vote with your money. Every purchase that you make validates the world that you want to see around you. So if you want to see local retail, stop shopping at Amazon. If you want to see independent restaurants, stop eating at Applebee's, stop eating at McDonald's. If you want me to survive and you want me to have a decent quality of life, pay what I'm charging now and understand that I'm not getting rich off of this. I'm just trying to carve out a sustainable life for myself. And either they'll pay the money and you get to stay open, or they won't and you get to close. But either one of those is a blessing, because there's no reason to be on the hamster wheel for a minute longer than necessary if you can't foresee a positive outcome in the future.
So I want to go to the hospitality solutions, because you mentioned that. I want to get kind of practical for people. These are really good. These are high level things they need to be thinking about. I want to get into the dirt a little bit. You mentioned that technology, and I'm a big believer in this too. Technology can empower the people. If it becomes an impediment, if it becomes a barrier between people, we've seen technology do that plenty of times. I absolutely believe in this. This is the new table touch. This is the new grassroots marketing, right? I believe in the ability for technology to empower the people. It's very easy in our industry to say, well, then you're going to be taking people's jobs away. Actually, what we're going to do is focus people's jobs to make sure that they're the best at their jobs and that we don't have labor shortages and certain issues that have plagued the industry. So let's talk about what you're doing with FLO Hospitality Solutions. What's the technology that you're trying to bring into restaurants that you see having the most upside value potential for the industry?
Actually, before that, I do want to touch on what you just said, because I think it's a big point that people need to understand. If I enable a device that allows people to order at the table, and I replace 5 servers with 2 captains, right? And those captains are there when people press a button to go deal with anything that they need. 4 people just lost their jobs, right? But that also gives me the opportunity to open another profitable location that gives 20 or 30 more people jobs, right? Yes. Because you can't be short-sighted in this moment. You have to see that there's an opportunity to scale. And so that is where we need to be. But to say that I'm trying to save jobs, I'm trying to save the entire industry. I'm trying to save my own business. And the lessons that I've learned are, if a technological advancement costs 4 jobs but enables 40, it's worth doing, especially when it actually creates a more hospitable model. Because as an example, that captain is still there to field any issues the customer has, to entertain, to inspire, to educate, to make people feel welcome. But the other side of that coin is nobody's waiting on a server to place an order, right? You want another drink? You press a button. You want to order another appetizer? You press a button. You're ready for dessert? You press a button. You're ready for your check? You press a button. There are elements of this industry that can be replaced by technology and still maintain that overall personalized human experience. That's what I was looking for with FLO. I created FLO to solve one of my big issues. Preux Proper opens at 5 p.m. daily. And 9 to 5, there was no one there to answer the phone. So I was left with one of 3 choices. I answer the phone. I didn't want to do that. No one answers the phone. That's stupid. And then the third one is that I pay someone to answer the phone. The trouble with the last one is that it's 8 hours worth of wage for 2 hours worth of work. But that 2 hours worth of work is spread out across 8 hours. So you turn to this human and you say, file these papers, stamp these things, fold these napkins till your hand bleed. But there's the margins just don't allow for superfluous labor. So I kept hiring that body and then firing that body, right? Because it was so hard to make the money work. And then I thought to myself, well, what if I built a platform whereby one reservationist can answer the phone for multiple restaurants and will just share the cost. There was nothing out there like it, so I built it. The same way I learned how to fix a toilet on YouTube. And so we built out the platform. I called some restaurateur friends that I had in the area, and I was like, yo, let's all share the cost of this one person. And you know how the industry is. They told people, who told people, who told people, who started calling me. I said, no. I said, you can't have it. It's mine. And then eventually, after there was enough demand, we built it out into a business. And it's a personalized experience. Your hostess answers your phone. They greet guests. They're handling the reservation software. They're seating guests. They're handling menus. They're doing all of these different things at once. And it's too much work for one person. Yep. And so on top of that, a lot of us are closed during the day, but like that's when the world works. Just because you open at 5 doesn't mean somebody's secretary isn't going to call you to place a reservation or book out an event at 9 o'clock in the morning. That's when the world works. And so, you know, it worked well for my business. It worked well for everyone else's. And at the end of the day, you look at an invisible service that's offering a higher level of hospitality. Everyone on the service sees a 5 to 15% increase in top line sales. Why? Because we're answering your friggin' phone. It's not rocket science.
It's simple.
We just answer your phone and we book you out through the same software you're already using. So if you're on Open Table, great, we are too. If you're on Talk or Resi, great, we are too. And you also save on average about 1,500 labor hours a year. So it saves you money and it makes you money and it provides a more personalized experience for the guests. Because like my reservationists aren't doing other things. They're just answering the phones. They have all the time in the world to field those questions about your grandmother's gluten, dairy, fiber issue, right? Her potential seafood and open air allergy. Because people have questions, and if you don't answer your phones, they're just going to call the next restaurant. Nobody's leaving a message.
That's it. People are exhausted right now, Josh. We just put them through the ringer. We went from big philosophical things. We talked about mindset. We talked about very practical applications. We talked about the purest forms of hospitality and everything in between. That's the disruption that we need. As to your point, these are not incremental. These are exponential. We are looking to shift everything about the industry. And it starts with so many of the mindset things. And I want to touch on this as we let you go. The biggest takeaway is that it has to be the shift of mindset. We cannot continuously put a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound, a different colored lipstick on the same pig, and again, expect different results. So for you, this is fascinating because you also talk to people outside of the industry, because I think I learn a lot about people outside of the industry because they don't have the institutional bias that we so often have. And so you mentioned that you have an executive coach, and I want to highlight that because I think we don't find enough mentorship outside of the industry because we don't think they get it. And maybe they don't. They also get the way that humans are fucking human. And so I want to talk about Josh for a minute because I think so many of us could really benefit from this type of coaching, from this type of external support and kicking the ass. So talk about Josh and the work that he's helped you do.
So Josh is an EOS implementer. It's the entrepreneurial operating system. It's all based off of a book called Traction by Gino Wickman. For those that are watching or listening that haven't checked it out, the book is transformational. And then out of those teachings, there are coaches out there that specifically teach best practices. Josh is one of those coaches. In my opinion, he's the best. Josh's sole reason for working with me is to help push the garbage out of the way. I come to Josh every month with like a list of amazing world-class ideas, things that'll change the world. And I walk away from that conversation with none or one. Because as entrepreneurs, we always have great ideas. We always believe that the next big thing is going to be the next best thing. And what Josh is there to do is he's there to focus me in and say, what are you really trying to accomplish? And what are the things that we can do to get there? And so, for me, the focus that he has provided, the mentorship that he has provided, the education that he has been able to impart to me has been invaluable. And if you can't afford an executive coach, cool. A lot of people can't. I would strongly recommend trying to find a mentor inside or outside of your industry that can help guide you along the path.
That's it. I'm a big believer in radical candor, Kim Smith. And so even Sophie, who people who watch the show knows, behind the scenes, I can see her smirking as she's like, Jensen's just always throwing 3,000 ideas at our team. And none of them are a good idea. But I hope that through the filter of people that we can find that one golden nugget. Josh, I really appreciate it. Unbelievable stuff. We are so simpatico in the way that we're approaching this, and I am sure that you and I are going to have a lot more to talk about. So everybody, Josh Kopel, of a Full Comp Podcast, FLO Hospitality Solutions, Preux Proper. You were touching every part of the industry, and I think that's what it takes. So definitely go check out Josh and all the work that he's doing, because I think it's important. We need, again, a mindset shift in this industry, and Josh is going to kick your ass until you get there. I really appreciate you being on, my friend.
No worries, man. Thank you so much.
All right, cheers. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right, everybody. Josh Kopel, Full Comp. Definitely check it out. Just love, because you can tell I get fired up. This mindset stuff, this shifting, creating completely new opportunities within the industry, that's everything that I'm working to do. And just like Josh is born out of so many failures, so many attempts to run through that wall, and just saying, you know what? I don't want to do that anymore. There has to be a different way, a new way forward. And sometimes that means ripping everything that you helped build, that you hold dear, rip it to shreds and build it again. I think it's an important thing for us to reflect on in this moment. So Best Served Podcast 207. Wow, so grateful. We talked about helping restaurateurs. Again, a lot of it starts with mindset, but then some practical things as well, especially on the use of technology. I think Josh is spot on there. So, and again, Best Served Loud. You know, people out there that are amplifying the works, the messages are so important. And Josh absolutely is doing that. So thank you, everybody, as always, for tuning in. I appreciate you and the work that you're doing out there to evolve this crazy industry that we love and hold so dear and want to continue to see thrive like never before. Cheers.